Leave the leaves. You've seen it on social media, you've seen it in the magazines. We're here to tell you right now that there is a reason behind the message. At this time of year, you start to bring out the rakes and all you hear is blowers going all day long because people are taking every last piece of organic matter off their property because that's what we think we need to do in fall. So what we are going to talk about today is why you should leave the leaves. Let's change the paradigm and let's get you in the know. So we're here in a display garden at Weston Nurseries, and as you can see, we have left the leaf litter right here. Now normally, common practice is to get all of these leaves out of here and get this bed down to bare soil for the winter. But here is why you don't want to do that. First, where do you think soil comes from? Soil comes from decomposing organic matter. That decomposing organic matter is then broken down even further by the insects and all the denizens of the soil. All of those microorganisms are going to break down that organic matter, and that makes it bioavailable to the plants to be taken up by the roots. So we want these leaves here. Beyond insulation, we want these leaves here because that's how we get soil. Now, each one of these leaves and all of the plants in your perennial garden are actually full of all the minerals and vitamins and everything that you add in fertilizer. So by leaving the leaves, by leaving the organic matter in your garden to decompose, you are actually returning all of those nutrients to the soil, so you don't necessarily need to buy fertilizer all the time for your plants. Nature figured out a way to fertilize herself. So think about leaving the leaves as nature's compost. The other that I mentioned a little bit earlier are your leaves are your insulation. Now snowpack is actually the best insulation, and I know none of us want to see snow. But the leaves are a great layer of insulation before we have that snow and we have those cold days. These are actually protecting the crowns of the plants, which is right there at the base of the plant, right above the roots. So those leaves right there are actually insulating the soil and protecting your investment. Yet another reason to leave the leaves. Now my favorite, and probably one of the most important, is that underneath all of this leaf matter are where all of our pollinator friends are hanging out. The queen bumblebees, once it gets cold enough, are actually going to hide under this leaf litter until spring, when they will emerge and they will find a new home to raise their next year's brood. Underneath here is also maybe a cocoon for the lunar moth. Now, if you've ever seen a lunar moth on your screen, they're like this big, bright green. You don't see many of them. Why? Because we take all the leaves off of our property. But that is exactly where the lunar moth is. So if you take all those leaves off, put them in the bag and send them off to the dump, well, you just sent the lunar moth off to the dump. All the pollinators that you've been trying to attract with these flowers all season long, they're under there. They're overwintering as cocoons, they're overwintering as larvae, and they are overwintering as just queen bees within the ground and underneath that leaf litter. So if you want more pollinators on your property, bees and butterflies, they're under there. So leave the leaves. And I'm actually going to throw a fourth one at you. If you are a native plant enthusiast and you have ever gone out and bought a spring ephemeral like trillium or trout lilies or something like that, those plants evolved living in about 6 inches of leaf duff. So if you spend a whole lot of money on trillium and then blow all the leaves off your property, that plant is absolutely going to die, and you just certainly wasted your money. So there's your fourth reason right there. If you really want to get into native plants, then you're going to want to leave the leaves because the native plants evolved in the leaves. So when you're thinking about your garden, especially a native plant garden or a pollinator garden, you need to think about evolution, and you also need to think about life cycles. And the life cycle of your pollinators, they sleep within the leaves. The life cycle of your native plants, they evolved within the leaves and within the leaf litter. So having this super clean garden may not be the way to go anymore. So I would suggest leave the leaves in your garden for the fall. Now, in the spring, once you see the pollinators emerge from the leaves and you start to see them fly about, then if you must, go ahead and you can pull some of the leaves out of your bed. But at least for the winter, until the pollinators emerge in the spring, I suggest that you leave them right there. Now, this doesn't go for lawns. If you leave the leaves on your lawns, then you will kill your grass. So you certainly do not need to do that. You can either rake the leaves off the lawn and into the beds, or you can rake them into a pile on your lawn and mulch them right there with the lawnmower, then rake them into the beds. Now, why do you not want to rake the leaves out of the beds and mulch them with the lawnmower? Because I told you about that lunar moth. Those cocoons are in there, and you're going to chop that cocoon into 1,000 pieces, so please don't do that. So go ahead, rake the leaves off your lawn, but leave them in the bed. And if you want to learn more about this, subscribe to our YouTube channel.